Well, hey, friends, typically I have something witty to say. I got nothing because college football season in College Station hasn't been so much fun, but that's all right, though. It is up to the second college football season 2, episode 12, presented by Academy Sports and Outdoors. They want to remind you to have fun out there with Academy Sports and Outdoors. Yo soy David Nuño, Kennedy Smith.
No habla español.
Look at the smile, constantly smiling.
You know, that's what I'm trying to do here. I'm always trying to bring positivity to the office.
So this show is beyond A&M sports. We look at a macro view of college football and the college football playoffs and whatnot. Got some undefeated teams left out there, Kennedy. A lot of good things to get into.
I would like to talk a little bit about TCU because they've got a really good chance of making the college football playoffs, which I did not see on my college football bingo card at the beginning of the season.
Nobody did. Here's the thing about TCU. First off, obviously, they fired Gary Patterson last year, made a quick fix. Dykes has done such a great job there. But to me, any team that is undefeated at this point in the season, they're 10-0, should be in the conversation for the college football playoffs, obviously. But for them, they cannot have a slip-up because I don't think they'll get the same grace, let's say, a Tennessee who's got one loss, who lost to Georgia, the number one team in the country, would get if they get a loss. And there's Oregon, who's played great since their loss to Georgia. So they have to win out to get in. There's a chance that they do that. I mean, they got Baylor this upcoming weekend. So, yeah, they certainly should be thinking about it.
Absolutely. And there's also a chance that we get 2 SEC teams in the college football playoffs, too.
Yeah, and I don't know how that's going to play out because you got Tennessee who's got that one loss. They obviously lost to Georgia. But you've got LSU, and not that I think they're going to get into the college football playoffs, but let's just say LSU beats Georgia in the SEC championship game there in Atlanta. Well, then obviously they slide into it. And what does that mean for other schools? And then you've got the Michigan-Ohio State game on the other side of the ledger for the Big Ten. Do both of those guys get in? They play each other. It depends how close it is. You got Pac-12 making some moves. You got the Big 12 making moves. So I don't know if we're going to get 2 SEC teams. I wouldn't be surprised, but it's going to be – there's still a lot of more football that has to be played out.
Well, we're going to be talking about some of those big matchups that are going to be going on this weekend in today's show. We've got a good set of guests coming at y'all, so stay tuned because we've got Pete Fiutak from College Football News, along with James Ihedigbo, who is a former UMass player and Super Bowl champion, here to talk about the A&M UMass matchup this weekend. And then we have some insiders from TCU and Georgia. So stay tuned because this is up to the second college football.
All right, a lot of college football storylines to get into. Yeah, the season's almost over, but let's bring in the expert, Pete Fiutak from College Football News, joining us. What's going on, my man?
Well, it's snowing here. So other than that, it's 2022. You'd think they figured out how to stop this. But other than that, everything's going all right.
All right, so let's play a little game to start things off. And I'm going to ask you, and then I'll have some follow-ups for you. But what has been the most surprising storyline this season in college football?
Okay, so severely deep cuts under the radar. How about UConn making a bowl game, Duke making a bowl game, Kansas making a bowl game? I mean, you want to talk about, if you could parlay that into a trifecta, forget it. You would never, the odds would be astronomical. And look, I get it. It's schedules. I get it. Getting to 6 wins shouldn't be that hard if you're not in the SEC West. But, there are a lot of programs out there that have not had any fun ever. I mean, and now they get to kind of rise up and have a little bit of fun. But on a bigger, larger scale, it's Alabama is out of the. We're talking right here on what is it, November 15th, and Alabama's been out of the national championship picture for a couple weeks. But as we just talked about off the air, I mean. Life in the SEC. I mean, Alabama. Oh my gosh, the Nick Saban era. It's dying. Dude's a knuckleball field goal and an illegal pick play away from being undefeated and the number 1 team going into tonight's college football playoff rankings. So, that's just how the razor thin margin in that conference, especially that division.
How about some other ones for you? LSU, that storyline there. They start off with the loss to Florida State, but yet they'll be in Atlanta, something that Jimbo hasn't been able to do, and several other programs in the SEC West.
Look, I am not a Brian Kelly fan for a whole slew of reasons from things that happened at Notre Dame, but he is one hell of a football coach. I mean, that was kind of the argument, though. I mean, it's LSU, and they've got guys. I mean, you've got NFL talent there. It's one of the, you throw it there with Texas A&M and an Alabama and Ohio State. Of where are the places that just have the guys that you could say, look, if you mold it a certain way, maybe get the right transfer here, get a little bit of luck with injuries and timing and other things, and this could work. And look, they had the one big game. They rose up and beat Bama, did what it had to do, and Now it's going to be in the SEC championship with a crazy puncher's chance of pulling that off, and then all of a sudden putting the college football playoff committee in a real bind.
All right, so let's talk about the team here in College Station. Look, I don't think anybody saw this bad.
No.
But just how surprising has this A&M season been in your eyes?
All right, to put it relatively speaking, this, of course, it's surprising. No chance. I mean, of course, nobody would have thought that they would not have a winning season and not even become. But there are a lot of games where they were just this close to, welcome to life of the SEC. I mean, ifs and buts. Welcome to the SEC. But you could make an argument that they were roughly 3 or 4 plays away from this being a vastly different season. And on the flip side, that kick by Arkansas goes this way, and it could be even worse. So but that's the game. Surprise wise, though, I never really thought, we talked about this before, that A&M was this top 6 team, only because while yes, the recruiting classes are amazing, the lines are going to be phenomenally talented over the next several years. Where are the skill guys? I mean, everyone's got skill guys in the SEC, but the quarterback situation not quite settled. The wide receiver situation, look, it's the same thing at Georgia and Alabama, and they were able to overcome it, but you don't have necessarily the high end guys. So like when the razor thin margins are there between all these teams, and the one question mark was the A&M skill guys were a little bit more questionable than the other guys, but certainly not. It shouldn't have been this bad because of it.
How about the season that TCU's having? What an amazing year so far. 10-0. They just beat Texas in a defensive battle.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the Big 12 was the most reliable pick all year. Every game was 38-34. Go over on all of it, and you'd be all right. But yeah, obviously last week went the other way. But look, and I don't mean to keep harping on this and being a broken record here, but who you beat? Like you give look at Texas A&M's schedule and look at TCU's schedule. Look, if everybody could go 10-0, it's that easy, everyone would do it. But what's their big win? I mean, at this point, is it Kansas State? Okay, I guess. Can they get by the Texas? Everyone overrated them a little bit because they watched them play Alabama and made it a close game. But it's not like they're playing a bunch of killers yet. So we'll see. They should beat Baylor this weekend. I think they lose the Big 12 championship to Kansas State. But if they don't, hey, look, 13-0, they are in the college football playoff no matter what. Don't apologize. Who cares about your schedule? You're a Power 5 conference champion. Get in and take your cuts.
A lot of football has to be played, but what do you think is more likely? 2 SEC teams, which I don't know, or 2 Big 10 teams?
Oh, definitely not that 2 Big 10, because the Michigan schedule isn't good enough. So the problem there is I think you're crazy to be like an Oregon and schedule Georgia to start the season. But, there's a flip side to that. Michigan played a true preseason schedule. Now, they usually don't duck teams in non-conference play. They've been really good at it. But this year, I think it was Colorado State, Hawaii. I think it's UConn was the other one. I mean, they didn't exactly extend themselves. And then they had an easy part in the Big Ten season to open things up. And look, they got by Penn State, they got by Michigan State, and there's, if you get by Ohio State, then no one's complaining. But long-winded way of saying the Ohio State-Michigan loser, especially if it's Michigan, isn't going to have the same respect as the Georgia-Tennessee loser Tennessee's going to have.
Okay, so what about LSU, Tennessee, and Georgia? That trio right there.
That's the nightmare scenario for the committee, because what do you do? I mean, on a 4 best team theory, first of all, this all sucks. They should expand it already and just say, hey, look, you win your conference champion. There needs to be a mechanism where we aren't relying on the judges and you can win your way in. But let's say LSU does beat Georgia. Let's say LSU beats 12-0 Georgia. And let's say Tennessee just rips through its last 2 games and does what it did against Missouri. How do you say, hey, look, LSU, nice job. You just won the best college football conference going, and you beat the undefeated #1 Georgia team. But you know what? We're not taking the best team, the conference champion, because we're going to take these 2 other teams. What do you do with that? I mean, you've never taken a 2-loss team, and I think you kind of blow off Florida State, because in that opener, had they played, anybody else first and had a warm-up game, I think they win that. But look, that's the problem, because you're going to take a Big Ten champion. If TCU goes undefeated, you got to take them. They're in no matter what. I do think that TCU is going to blow it in the Big 12 championship. I don't think USC is going to be a 12-1 Pac-12 championship. So I do think there's going to be a lot of elimination inside here. So
Pete, great stuff, my friend. Thanks for doing it.
Anytime. You have a good one.
You too, man.
At Academy Sports and Outdoors, bikes for the whole family are just a click away. Buy online at academy.com with our free in-store assembly. Your next set of wheels, plus helmets, pads, and water bottles will be waiting for you at our in-store pickup counter. Get to the fun faster with our in-store pickup and free assembly at Academy Sports and Outdoors.
All right, let's look into the SEC. Georgia, Kentucky this weekend. Kentucky coming off an embarrassing loss. Georgia doing what they always do, at least recently, dominating. Let's talk to Jordan Hill from Dogs247, the beat writer. What's going on, Jordan?
Hey, not much. It's actually kind of a rainy afternoon in Athens. So it beats the 30-degree weather we were treated to in Starkville, Mississippi. But, yeah, hoping for better weather as the week goes on.
Yeah, man. So I just want to ask you at this point in the season, I don't think anybody's surprised that Georgia's having a great year. Obviously, they're Georgia. They've been afforded that grace. But this good with so much turnover, was that expected?
I don't think at all. And, I do think people thought there was a chance the offense could take a step forward. But I think a lot of people, and myself included, thought this defense was going to be a work in progress, that we were going to see the talent that they've recruited. It's no secret they had talented guys behind the likes of Nakobe Dean, Jordan Davis, guys like that last season. But then they come out in week one and only give up 3 points to Oregon. And so all of a sudden you're kind of adjusting your expectations. And on the whole, this defense has played really, really good throughout the season. Had a couple hiccups, a couple blown assignments in the Kent State game. Kind of a rough first half against Missouri, but finished each of those games strong and has played well since then. So, I think some of the expectations were a little bit higher on offense as far as everybody being back. They did lose 5 starters, but still thought, a full offseason with Stetson Bennett that maybe the offense could take a step forward. But the fact that defense has been as good as it has been, I think really has shocked some people.
How much credit should Stetson get this year? Because he was the brunt of all the jokes, or not the jokes, but the criticisms that their offense got. Yet this year, he's been in conversations for Heisman running on and off this entire year.
Yeah, I think it's fair to give him a lot of credit because, the line last year was a lot of the time that Georgia won in spite of his offense and specifically in spite of Stetson Bennett. I think he's played really well. I think it's easy to lose sight of the fact they've played most of this season without A.D. Mitchell, who was going to be the number one receiver. He got hurt on the very first offensive play of the Samford game in week 2. He's played all of 4 snaps since then. So you think about the fact Stetson spent this entire offseason working with all these receivers, but working with A.D. Mitchell with the expectation that was going to be his go-to guy as far as the wide receivers. They've done a good job of not really missing a beat without AD, had guys step up, and many different guys among the receivers since he got hurt. But then you have the tight ends, Brock Bowers and Darnell Washington, that kind of puts you over the top. Yeah, I think Stetson deserves a lot of credit. I'm not convinced he's going to be holding the Heisman Trophy by the time we get to December, but he definitely has done a lot to keep this offense chugging along, even without a really, really good playmaker in A.D. Mitchell.
I think when it comes to Georgia, it doesn't really matter what other teams do, but just throwing out this scenario for you, that the fact that Kentucky probably had their worst performance during the Mark Stoops era, is that anything that should concern Georgia, knowing that this team who's lived under their expectations is coming after an embarrassing loss?
I do think that they understand Kentucky's going to be hungry and Kentucky's going to have something to prove. I think coming into this year, the consensus was that if someone was going to challenge Georgia, it was probably going to be Kentucky just because of what they brought back. Will Levis, Chris Rodriguez, all those guys, and that hasn't panned out. And Tramel Walthour, one of Georgia's defensive ends, was asked, what would your mindset be if you were a Kentucky player coming in this game? And he said, that he would expect them to be hungry, that they've got something to prove. And, I think it almost kind of helps Georgia in the fact that I didn't see this as a situation where Georgia may go to this game and sleepwalk, but I'm sure Kirby Smart and this coaching staff is saying, look, this team has something to prove. They were the first SEC team Vanderbilt has beaten in 3 years, that they're going to have something to prove having this game in Lexington, and Georgia can't afford to be thinking ahead to that matchup with LSU in December.
Jordan, interesting times that one SEC team could get into the college football playoffs, 2 maybe 3. Like, there's a lot of different scenarios out there. I don't think anybody really believes 3, but, what happens if LSU were to beat Georgia? And, Tennessee's got this incredible season. So I'll just ask you, what do you think's what's going to happen? How many SEC teams get into the college football playoffs?
I think ultimately we see 2. I think it's Georgia and I think it's Tennessee, because I think that LSU is not going to be able to beat Georgia, though that would just throw a total wrench into the plans. But to me, it's going to be between Tennessee and the loser of Ohio State, Michigan. And I think if you're a Tennessee fan, you're probably rooting for Ohio State, because Michigan's non-conference this year was just abysmally bad. Their best win out of conference was UConn, and credit to Jim Mora and those guys, but you're not getting a whole lot of love if the best win you had out of conference was UConn. So I think unless that Ohio State-Michigan game is like a 1, a 2, a 3-point game, I just feel like whoever loses that game is probably not getting in it. I think we're probably going to see the likes of Georgia, Ohio State, TCU, and probably Tennessee by the time we get into the playoff.
Good insight there from Jordan Hill. Jordan, thank you, sir.
Absolutely. Enjoyed it.
2 weeks in a row talking a little TCU football. It's been a phenomenal year for them. They're trying to get into the college football playoffs. I think I'm allowed to say that at this point after beating Texas. Austin Flanagan joining us, the host of the Frog Pod podcast and former radio host at KTCU 88.7. What's going on, Austin?
It's going well over here. Your big win on Saturday night for the Frogs in DKR, and you got a big one in Waco this weekend, but for now we're just enjoying being 10-0.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about how the Frogs were able to do it, because not surprised that they won. How they won, how they limited the University of Texas. I mean, Bijan didn't have a big game. I mean, they were able to stop. Xavier Worthy didn't have a big game. Quinn Ewers had his struggles. How do they turn up the defense?
Well, the more you watch the tape of it, you realize that this defense is they've played a full 4 quarters for the first time really all season. I mean, Joe Gillespie has preached that the way this 3-3-5 is going to work, it's going to be able to kind of be a bend, don't break. But in this game, it didn't bend at all. TCU was violent at the point of attack. They dominated the line of scrimmage early on. I believe there was a stat that came out that half of Texas's carries, the ball carrier was either met at the line of scrimmage or behind it. And for a Texas offensive line who had been rated so highly, especially in the run offense all year, that was huge for TCU. And it really spoke to the linebackers, and Johnny Hodges getting Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. He had one of his best games of his career, just run fitting and attacking the blitzes the way that Joe Gillespie wrote it up.
Austin, what about on the flip side, though? Texas was able to limit the TCU offense, something we hadn't seen this season. What were they doing, or was it more TCU shooting themselves in the foot?
Well, the initial reaction, you just watch it straight up is, and the point that was kind of be a concern, kind of the whole game was that TCU's interior offensive line is very good in both run and pass. The tackles are more so better at just run blocking. Andrew Coker had some struggles on one-on-one. Brandon Coleman, they sent kind of a delayed blitz every now and then that really caused some communication issues. So if you really watch it, the interior of the line held their own, and it was the tackles that kind of got broken down, and Texas more times than not were sending 6-7 guys and making TCU make quick decisions. And it took Garrett Riley a while to kind of adjust to that properly. But eventually what ended up providing dividends for TCU was in the second half, they were able to just wear them out and just run the ball right up the middle on Texas. Texas had all the energy early, but they weren't able to sustain that energy, and TCU just shrugged away at them. Kendre Miller had almost 140 yards on the ground, over half of that being on one big play. But still, towards the end of the game, you saw it. TCU was able to literally just run right at Texas, and that proved to be the difference in the game.
All right, what about when Texas does score with just under 5 minutes left? Obviously a defensive touchdown. What is the feeling? They're going to let one slip away, or it's no big deal. This game is in the back. What was that kind of emotional experience?
When I saw that, obviously, if you're a TCU fan, that's scary to you because the 2-score game to a 1-score game that late, and Texas didn't have momentum for quarters since then that play happened. So it was kind of a step back. It was like, is this really going to happen? But, TCU put themselves in the position, like I said, where they were able to wear Texas down and go to the run. And then the big play that kind of didn't really seal the game, but that kind of suppressed all the anxiety that any TCU fans had was when Max Duggan made a nice completion to Quentin Johnson on 3rd and 4. So, that play really shouldn't have happened. It was a simple miscommunication mistake on Max and Kendre's part, but the TCU offense doing what they did best in the second half is what kind of brought that anxiety level down from that big play.
So what challenges does Baylor present, and how big of a test is this one, considering the bulk of the schedule is done and you've got just a little bit more before that Big 12 championship?
Yeah, the challenges Baylor is going to bring is the fact that this is a rivalry game, and no matter what either team's season is looking like, it's going to be a good ball game. Last year especially, the first game after firing Gary Patterson, TCU has a Baylor team that has playoff aspirations coming into Fort Worth. Max Duggan's not playing. You got to go to Chandler Morris in his first start for TCU. So just that factor, the rivalry game, going on the road to Waco is going to be tough. But from a schematics point, this Baylor front seven is very good. And TCU likes to run at teams, and this is going to be probably the TCU's biggest challenge, honestly, in all the front sevens they played so far. So for TCU, I think what you got to be able to do is you got to go outside and find your plays on the outside, because it's not going to be like the Texas game where you're going to be able to rely on running up the gut as much. And you also got to keep Max Duggan upright. He took a lot of sacks in the Texas game. I believe there was 4 in the first 20 minutes of play, so that can't happen again. But I think that just the key mainly here is to anchor your offensive line needs to anchor itself, keep Max upright, and they got to be able to get to the outside and limit turnovers. If those things happen, I think TCU has a very strong chance on Saturday.
I know that TCU has been close before, but is playoff talk now acceptable after the Texas victory, or still got to get through some hurdles before you can really start thinking of that scenario?
Well, I mean, you're 10-0. You got to think about the playoffs, obviously. I mean, TCU, being 10-0 is a place in college football where you feel comfortable, and in most situations, you can lose a game and still feel like you have a shot. Knowing the committee and how they viewed TCU, I think TCU needs to go undefeated to win. But I mean, you got a rivalry game versus a Baylor team that just took a really bad loss to a K-State team last week. You got an Iowa State team at home the last week of the season, and then you got a Big 12 championship, and all 3 of the games TCU will be favored in my opinion. So if you're a TCU fan, you got to start thinking of flights to Phoenix or flights to Atlanta.
No doubt about that. Hey, Austin, great work as always. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, David.
Need a new grill? Academy Sports and Outdoors is the destination for your outdoor cooking needs. With our free in-store assembly and pre-assembled grills and smokers, buy online at academy.com and pick up in-store. So keep those grilling plans at Academy Sports and Outdoors.
On with me now, I have James Ihedigbo. He is a UMass alum, but he also played for about a decade in the NFL. He was a Super Bowl champion with the Ravens, but today he is here to talk about the matchup of the weekend, which is UMass versus A&M. James, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much for coming on. Now, in the beginning of the season, I don't think anybody really expected this A&M UMass game to be something big to talk about, but here we are now. I think the playing field has evened out quite a bit. Before the season started, did you ever think that this was going to be anywhere near a fair fight?
No, and anytime you're talking about SEC football and you're talking about a premier university and program such as Texas A&M, I have to say I did circle it on the calendar living in Houston, right down the road, looking forward to, attending the game, but didn't think it would be a matchup at all. I mean, just, such a supreme recruiting class and group of men, and UMass still, building. Didn't think it would be a matchup, but, we might be in for something on Saturday.
Yeah, so head coach Don Brown, he actually was the head coach for about half of your career when you were there. He left for a little while, but now he is back. So is there anything that you can tell me about his coaching style and the way that he runs this game?
Yeah, no, Coach Brown, his resume speaks for itself in college football. He's had, his fingerprint of success, from, Michigan's defense, when they're top, 5 and number 1 in the country for a certain period of time, defensive-wise, scoring defense-wise, Boston College. I mean, the list goes on, even at his time at UMass. So for him to come back and it kind of be full circle, him back at UMass, he definitely brings that aggressive, style of defense, a scrappy mentality and really, a design of pressuring the quarterback and making the quarterback make post snap reads.
So the scrappy defense you're talking about, we know that A&M's offense has been struggling this year. So how do you see the Minutemen defense matching up with this Aggie offense?
Well, I think first and foremost is going to have to be stopping the run. I think, A&M, their ability to run the ball, and this is a game for them where they can get back to the identity of winning at the line of scrimmage and utilizing that offensive line to create a new line of scrimmage. And I know Jimbo's going to have these guys ready. They're not going to go in with the mentality that we can afford to lose this one at home. And I know Jimbo's going to have those guys fired up and ready to go.
Yeah, I do not think the Aggies can afford to not be prepared for this game. So what have you seen out of UMass so far this season that you think they really need to work on before heading to Kyle Field?
Just their ability to execute in key situations. I think situational awareness, and this is a young UMass roster. You have guys that are freshmen and sophomores, truly, getting their feet wet and playing real minutes. And so it's learning on the run for them. And so their ability to execute in key situations, whether it's third down, whether it's 2-minute drill, whether it's end of half, those situations will be key for them in their overall success.
All right, well, the Minutemen are currently on a 7-game losing streak, but hey, the Aggies are on a 6-game losing streak, so anything could happen. What would this win mean for the UMass program?
I think it would be an amazing. I think it would be a pillar for them to build on for future success and most importantly recruiting. I think that would be key. I think a lot has to happen for them to win in Aggie land playing on the road. So although I wish them luck and I'm rooting for them, I do have to bet on A&M and their preparation in this game because I cannot see the Aggies letting this one fall through the cracks.
All right, James, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Give me a score prediction.
Oh, final score prediction. I'm going to say 63-17 Aggies. That's going to be my prediction for Saturday. We'll see. I mean, we'll see. We will see. But I think SEC football, in all my years of playing, it's always known as the baby NFL. It's almost like the D League. And so their ability to even perform and their losses, respective to UMass losses are different graded talent. So I think this is kind of a game for them to help get them back on track and get in the winning column and then finish the season strong.
We will see. I think the Aggies could definitely use a score like that. Well, thank you so much for sitting down and talking a little bit about this. This has been James Ihedigbo talking about UMass versus A&M this weekend.
All right, Kennedy, I guess that's it. That's the show. We'll have one more show for the regular season and then potentially maybe some more fun stuff down the road.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the bowl games.
Maybe. I mean, if you're nice, we'll see. We'll see how nice you really are.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Make a mad face and close out the show because I've never seen you with it. Oh.
Thank you for watching Up to the Second College Football. I can't do this because people are going to clip this someday and I'm going to seem like a total wench.
Well.
Stop.
I'm kidding. But the funny thing is when you made the mad face, you did like a little lip thing that made you look like you were about to laugh. So you can't stay mad.
No,
you can't stay mad.
It's not even like a mad face. It's my I was on the line at the track meet face. It's intimidation. Just a little smirk like, it's coming for you. I think this is the face that A&M needs to take on for the rest of their season.
It's Up to the Second College Football. I don't know how to finish that. That was great. Thank you.